11 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour this morning on WNCR-TV Now. I want to say a good morning to you. Do hope you had a fantastic yesterday, making today even greater. So be sure here. Yep, we're on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube Live. So we are streaming this morning. Let me get this. Well, we're good there as well. Well, let's just get on the air this morning. Again, good morning to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in to WNCR-TV Now. 11 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. 11 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. I tell you, it's cooler than it was on yesterday. Can we say praise the Lord? Those thunderstorms and heavy winds came down on yesterday, causing trees to tumble here, there, and everywhere. Let me do this and say good morning. Just say good morning, everyone. How about that? And do this. Well, not lots. And do this. And there we go. So yeah, be sure to share the Facebook page there, or share the YouTube page, whichever one you want to do. Or how about this? Share them both. You can do that as well. And be sure to subscribe to the page and have your notifications turned on so you'll be aware when we are on television or on Facebook Live, should I say. That's when that would do that. Because during the Juneteenth event, we did go Facebook Live during that time, and so I was able to share with you the Juneteenth parade, and so people enjoyed that, and some of the vendors that were there at the Juneteenth event this past year. So that was a pretty cool experience as well. Number of areas had Juneteenth events, and I think there's some more Juneteenth events going on through the rest of the month as well. Of course, throughout today's program, phone lines open for you at 252-407-8432. That's 252-407-8432 is the number to call to participate in today's conversation. Yesterday, as it was going off, I said I would kind of find out about the leased vehicles, because someone called in and talked about the leased vehicle situation. And so what I did do, that dates back to 2022. So let me see if I can find 2022. And so they work, and so of course the let's just see if I can find it. How about that? Let's just see if I can find it. Council meetings. And this is the one, right? This is the one. Yeah. So this would have happened. So there was, I remember the committee of a whole meeting as well. So I don't quite remember what committee meeting it would have been in regards to that. And what is also interesting is that particular city council meeting is not online. Let's see. City council met on this day, a regular scheduled council meeting. They don't have their December meeting on YouTube. Well, isn't that something? Let me do one more thing. So 12/12/22. Maybe it's put somewhere else. Or maybe not. Or maybe not. So if it was in the December meeting, I would think maybe the committee meeting would have, I can look that up too, would have been a few months prior to. that situation. Let me go to the committee of a whole minutes if they go back from, if they're online for that particular day. Mayor Council. Should use the web, the Facebook, the page, because it's okay. Agenda from 2022. And they definitely had a meeting because there's a 12/12. But let's see if it was in November that they had the committee meeting. Because generally they don't vote on something they just talked about in committee for the most part. So not that one. Was it November closed session? So, come on, do everything. Okay, what is this? Okay, so light duty procurement. So this was on November the 14th, 2022. So let's see if I can find the committee meeting from November the 14th and see if that is available. November 14th, there it is. All right, so let's look here. This is the for structure. Okay, here it is right here.
And for the sake of discussion here, we're talking about pickup trucks, obviously patrol cars, SUVs, those type of vehicles. And we have made them aware, and we are able to come here today with a united voice with respect to moving forward this proposal with your approval, of course. What I want to start off with is just to give you some background information about where our current light vehicle fleet stands. We have 342 total light-duty vehicles. Approximately about 45% of these are police patrol cars, police patrol vehicles. We are currently about 186 of those vehicles are over 10 years old. Ideally, we would try to replace vehicles either at a point where they are 10 years of age or older, have 100,000 miles of service, or where the repair costs exceed the cost of replacement. Those would be the typical metrics, and we do our best with the resources we have available to achieve that. We have run into some challenges during the pandemic because we were not sure where we would stand with respect to revenues, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to function in terms of the delivery of all city services. We had to not make light vehicle purchases in fiscal years 20 and 21. At the same time, we realized that with the cost of vehicles going up, that it is a challenge for us, like other jurisdictions across the state and across the country, to be able to accelerate this replacement. It would require a significant acceleration and significant increases in funds provided by the city to purchase these vehicles the way that we have in the past with current revenues. And at the same time, and this is case, I know some of y'all are experiencing this personally, and especially businesses are experiencing it, we are as well. We are dealing, of course, with a very different supply market for vehicles than existed prior to the pandemic. In terms of, obviously, that production went down significantly during the pandemic. It is still not ramped up to prior levels, and it likely will not ramp up to pre-COVID levels, at least for traditional vehicles, due to the shift that a lot of manufacturers are making to electric vehicles, which, as an organization, we will probably get to someday, but we're not there yet, particularly with rated vehicles like patrol cars. On the same time, with respect to fleet maintenance, like we are facing in other areas of city operations, we are challenged in being able to recruit and retain mechanics. There are multiple reasons for this, and these are the same challenges that a lot of other jurisdictions and employers are facing. We are also noting that even with newer vehicles we're requiring, that you have significant changes, which creates challenges with respect to maintaining that fleet in terms of maintaining part inventories and those type of issues. And also, because of some of these challenges, we're already outsourcing a significant amount of light-duty repair to local vendors. So we kind of already do out of necessity, or due to the circumstances, are needing to have a lot of our light-duty vehicles repaired and maintained by local repair shops here in the area, both in Rocky Mount, primarily Rocky Mount. So in looking at this, what Enterprise has proposed to us, and they are the primary provider of this service in North Carolina and nationwide, is two services that we work in parallel. The first is that instead of purchasing light-duty vehicles directly, currently we buy them with cash off of state contracts, we would enter into open-ended, and these are called equity leases. They would typically be 4 to 5 year lease agreements, depending on the type of vehicle. We would have the ability to acquire the vehicle at the end of the lease for basically we will pay the vehicle off over a period of 4 to 5 years. And we can also return these vehicles at any time. And what advantage this provides for us, and I think I explained a little bit later in this presentation, is that based on what they will be doing from their side and working with us with fleet management, is it will provide us the opportunity to take advantage of the value of that vehicle in the marketplace. So, for example, we purchase a pickup truck, and after 2 years of service, from a depreciation standpoint, that vehicle would have a value of $25,000. But Enterprise, looking at where the market is, would be able to sell that vehicle for $30,000. If that were the case, and we were able to guarantee that we could get a replacement vehicle, they would sell the vehicle, and as such, would actually give us as credit the $5,000 difference between what they sold it for and the depreciated value. And we actually did receive information and confirm this with one of their current club customers in Florida, Lee County, where they recently did this with a large number of pickup trucks, and they received several $100,000 in credit. Were able to replace their trucks, and it actually helped reduce the net cost associated with the leasing. From the maintenance perspective, we would be looking at primarily outsourcing our light-duty maintenance. This would be working with them as a maintenance management partner. Enterprise has a network already of local vendors, and they can expand that local network as well, where they already have negotiated rates with those vendors. Those would allow us to be able to take advantage of that. Work would also be done by certified mechanics and meet other standards. The centralized billing and payment, currently, when we do repairs, we're having to basically do them as one-offs with vendors, so there's a tremendous amount of internal paperwork that's issued. By working with Enterprise, basically they give us it's a pass-through for them. They don't charge a markup on it, but they would collect all the invoices. They would give us one bill, and we would pay it that way, so we would be able to manage it and pay it a little easier. It's available for their leased vehicles as well as for city-owned vehicles, so we'd be able to ship all of our city-owned fleet as we move in this transition to this model. The city, where it's appropriate, would continue to supplement light-duty preventative maintenance in appropriate situations like oil changes and circumstances like that as we shift over. At some point in the future, probably after about 5 years, once we've moved all the vehicles over to a lease situation, that preventative maintenance, like all additional maintenance, would be done by outsourced groups, but we would be able to make that transition with our own staff. The way procurement works with respect to vehicle lease, we kind of summarized it earlier, but I'll talk a little bit more. There are a couple of master agreements that City Council has to approve, and that would be with your approval at our next meeting on November 28th. This would continue to piggyback the existing North Carolina local government contracts. They would source the vehicles potentially from a broader vendor network than we currently have available to us. We pretty much just have to work only with a select number of vendors. They would be able to work with a broader number of dealers statewide. We would recommend a change in our policy where we would have council approve basically a maximum budget for this on an annual basis. And because of the way these vehicles would be acquired and the volume of them, we would ask that the city manager be given the authority to execute these individual vehicle leases. So that would be a change in our existing policy. Enterprise, as we're going through this transition, they would process the sale of those city-owned vehicles that we would be replacing. This would actually be to our advantage because they would probably be able to get better prices for the sale of those vehicles than we currently do through our surplusing process. And that is something that would work to us, and we would receive the proceeds of those sales. This allows us to significantly increase the quantity of vehicles for annual replacement. With the funding that we have available in the current market, we would probably be looking at replacing probably 24, 25 vehicles a year. And this, as you probably saw in the analysis, will allow us in the first year alone to potentially replace over 100 vehicles through leasing. So we would be able to dramatically accelerate our vehicle replacement. It does, of course, that's due to the fact that through leasing, you spread out those costs and they're lower in a direct sense compared to direct purchase. And obviously, going back to the equity model, the turnover itself, that's worked together with the city and enterprise to evaluate the mileage and the quality of the fleet, looking with respect to the market to ensure when those opportunities do exist for us to gain value back with the sale of those vehicles and then replacing them with new vehicles that we would lease, ensuring that they are available, we would be able to take that money and apply it as credit to the future costs of the program. With respect to light-duty vehicle maintenance, to discuss a little bit more, this would be another master agreement with Enterprise for maintenance management. With all of our leased vehicles, except for patrol cars, because they are rated, there would be a monthly maintenance fee that would be added to the lease, and that would be all-inclusive. So there's no deductible. That would basically be like having a maintenance contract on this equipment, and it would cover all the maintenance costs. That would allow us then to be able to basically easily budget what the maintenance costs will be for those vehicles. For city-owned vehicles and leased patrol cars, they do have a management fee of $5 a month as a flat fee per vehicle. We then pay those vendor charges, and that rates are negotiated by Enterprise, and we pay them all on a monthly basis, as opposed right now we're basically having to cut a separate check or do a separate PO and requisition for each time we go to a vendor, and that's direct billed. And then they also provide to us at no additional charge an online database, an online portal for us to be able to centralize the management of all vehicles. And this would be a significant improvement for us because our current system that we have for managing our fleet, which we've had now for over 15 years, almost 20 years at this point, needs to be basically replaced, and this gives us an opportunity to replace it at a considerable discount. There are some challenges that we recognize in doing this. First of all, from a staffing perspective, we realize that because we're basically going to be managing a contracted procurement and maintenance process, that we have some need to reallocate some staffing into certain areas. One is in the maintenance management portion itself. You have somebody on staff in fleet maintenance who would be responsible for managing this maintenance management program to make sure all repairs are done, to coordinate with departments and their vehicles, to coordinate with Enterprise, and to be able to facilitate that. There is also a need to reallocate a staff position, and we have the vacancies to be able to do this that can be reassigned. There would need to be an accountant added into the accounting division to deal with the management of the leases. And this is primarily due to a change that took effect this past year in our accounting standards known as GASB 87, which dramatically changes how we have to manage leases for capital leases. So this is a necessary step that we have to take, and that would be something that we would need to allocate staff to. From the transition perspective, in terms of making this work, our first step would be to move all of our vehicles, both light duty and heavy duty, to the fleet software system, and then, of course, retire our existing one. It would then be to make adjustments in fleet maintenance operations. Along with preventative maintenance, they would also continue to focus on our heavy equipment as well as our small engines, like mowers, weed eaters, those type of pieces of equipment that we have. One of the significant changes that also will occur is that when it comes to the budget for light-duty vehicles, that will shift from currently being capital outlay, which is technically a discretionary budget item, over to a lease obligation, which becomes a non-discretionary budget item. So that is one matter that we do have to look at. We also recognize, and it's very important to us, that we use this opportunity to increase the utilization of MWBE vendors here in the Rocky Mount area. And so our purchasing division, our MWBE coordinator, will be working to identify potential vendors, work with current vendors to make sure that they are able to be part of Enterprise's vendor network so that they can participate in this program and to potentially increase their participation in this area of city operations. The transition schedule that Enterprise has proposed, and it's over a 5-year period starting in calendar year 2023, would involve potentially replacing up to 194 vehicles. As I mentioned in the first slide, we have 186 vehicles that are 10 years or older, so pretty much all of those vehicles could be replaced. This will, of course, dramatically reduce our city-owned fleet. We've also identified in our fleet 12 vehicles that, due to limited usage, could be retired without being replaced. So those would be retired. And then you would see that then you would have a less voluminous replacement schedule over the next 4 years in terms of, replacing city-owned fleet. Because if you go over to this side here to the right, you will notice that starting in the third year, 2025, there would be the opportunity to replace existing lease vehicles to gain that equity back that we can use to keep costs to the lowest extent possible. So this model has the ability for us to be able to do something that we really need to be able to do in a manner that would minimize the overall financial impact to the city. The goal being that by 2027, all of our light-duty vehicles, including patrol cars, would be leased by the city from Enterprise. This financial analysis goes through that 5-year period that I talked about, as well as in the 6th year, which is the first year of full leasing operations. This takes into we are comparing this currently to our base funding for light-duty procurement and maintenance. This current fiscal year, we were looking at approximately $2.3 million, and then it's been adjusted a little bit for inflation going forward. This second area is the cost of the proposed implementation, including leasing contracts, proceeds from vehicle sales, and equity from lease exchanges, as well as maintenance costs, the software, and staffing adjustments. And even in the first year, and this is if we were to get all 194 vehicles, we would still save approximately $228,000. In all 6 years, with the exception of 1 year, year 3, we would achieve savings. And over that 6-year period of time, we conservatively, and I want to stress this is conservative, this is, we reviewed the numbers Enterprise provided and adjusted them downward in terms of benefits and upward in terms of costs to be more careful. We would be looking at potential savings of $4 million compared to what we would be spending if we maintained our current practices, which would not enable us to be able to really be able to catch up with respect to vehicle replacement. If we were to try to increase the amount of money, if we were to try to catch up on our own through direct procurement, those costs up at the top would be significantly higher. So just to talk a little bit about fleet organization, this is the current staffing org chart for the fleet.
So that is the information there that was provided to the City Council back in 2022 as it relates to vehicle lease program. And you saw there from Ken Hunter what cost savings it would provide to the city over a 6-year period, over nearly $4 million in projected savings to the city from or going to that situation. Now, of course, there were a couple of questions involving this, and let's remember, well, by me showing this would tell you where we were with the city. So let me go back to this.
Thank you, Ken, for your presentation and time. Any questions? Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. I'm aware of Enterprise through my 24 years of equipment finance and leasing in my previous employer. Very good organization. I would like to ask our representatives of the Enterprise several questions, if I may.
Absolutely.
Your sources for vendors, which are larger than what we use. Can you talk about where these vendors are? I don't know if you can mention names or not, but I would like to know more about your vendor network.
Yes. So we try to utilize the vendors that are on the state contract and sheriff's contract first. Recently, we've had to venture out to other dealerships just because of the inability to get vehicles over the past 2 years due to the pandemic. What we try to do is we make sure that whatever vendor we do reach out to, that they match the state contract or sheriff's contract, and if they don't, then we'll let you know. If you have certain dealers that you work with currently, we can continue working with those dealers, But it is our responsibility to let you know how much you're overpaying by using those dealers versus using the vendors on state or sheriff's contract.
But in most cases, the cap costs will be less than what we might be getting otherwise.
So it depends. If you typically purchase vehicles off of state contract and sheriff's contract, pricing is going to be the same. If you buy from local dealers, then it may go down depending on what your purchase agreement was. So I don't want to overpromise here,
No.
but it will be state contract pricing or sheriff's contract pricing.
Talk a little bit about your repair clients.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot of vendors on our maintenance program. Across the country, we've got about 100,000. I don't know exactly how many in Rocky Mount area. I would say about 40 different vendors that are on our maintenance program. So basically what happens is the driver would go to one of these vendors. We have ASC certified technicians on staff. So let's just say there's a $1,000 repair. When they make the call to our 1-800 number or our online portal, they'll let us know what's going on with the vehicle. Our team will look at the pricing to make sure that it's in line and approve or decline the repair. Let's just say the repair is higher, it's a higher amount. Let's just say it's $2,000 or $3,000, but that vehicle is only worth $5,000. Then we'll reach out to the city and let you know that a vehicle is in the shop. It's got a $2,000 or $3,000 repair. It doesn't make sense to fix it because the vehicle isn't even worth that much. So you'll get as much information as you possibly can so that you guys can make the best decision for your fleet.
That's good news. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The people that is in fleet maintenance now, are we displacing people or will we have other positions for people?
We're not displacing anybody by this is currently in fleet maintenance. The staff that is currently in there will continue to do what they're doing because, and let me go back to this slide. For example, currently on day shift, both of these positions are vacant. We're going to fill one and one's going to be reallocated. So we have one light duty mechanic there, and then we have hybrid mechanics, light and heavy duty mechanics in the night shift. So the light and heavy duties will focus more on heavy duties and small engines. With the new light duty mechanic, we will work with them as once they are hired to transition them over into a heavy duty opportunity that once we have fully moved over the light duty fleet, they will not be displaced. So it is our intention, because this is how we've always operated, to make sure that all the current employees and any employees that we would hire into this division are taken care of so that they can continue long-term employment with the city in a capacity similar to why they were hired.
I guess my next question do you have any contract in the contracts, minority contracts?
I'm sure we do. That's not my area, unfortunately. I can find out how many we do have, or I could send a list of the current vendors that are on our contract now. But most importantly, if you've got several that you want to add, we can do that. So it's not a problem at all adding more.
By adding other vendors to our network, they become part of our network, so we'll drive other business to them, as a enterprise approved vendor. Such as other vehicles are out there, other maintenance shops are located, so it helps create business and drive business to local vendors as well.
So I got several questions. Interesting concept. So I heard you reference on the front end another county in Florida. Are there any other municipalities that you're working with like this?
Yes, we have about 100 government entities in North Carolina that we work with. I personally manage 20 from Greensboro to the coast. Recently, Columbus County partnered with us, well, I say recently, about a year ago, and Onslow County, Bertie County, a lot of towns, Mount Olive.
You got any towns about our size or larger?
So not in North Carolina. We've got counties that are very similar in size.
Mhm.
Like Columbus County is very similar in size. The first year they got 115 vehicles or so, but they're definitely similar in size to the city.
Okay. And so for sourcing vehicles, if you find that you're unable to locate the vehicle that we're looking for within the current sources that you mentioned, what's your next step once you do that again?
Unfortunately, it is very difficult to find vehicles right now, especially when you're looking at police vehicles. If you have a vendor that you would like for us to reach out to, we can do that. But we have a network of thousands of dealers, and we're gonna give you options. Whether we try to stick with North Carolina, but if you've got to have a vehicle and we cannot find one in North Carolina, then we're gonna venture out to different states, and we're gonna let you know what that price variance may be. But we can't guarantee a vehicle because they are very hard to find. I have noticed that the market is softening a little bit, so it's a little bit easier to find vehicles now. But manufacturers have gotten away from producing as many government vehicles as they have in the past. So prior to the pandemic, you could almost get a vehicle anytime you needed it. And now it's much harder to get a vehicle because they're not producing as many government vehicles. It's more geared towards retail purchasing.
Okay, so we're not purchasing used vehicles anywhere. This is all new.
Well, we can purchase used, but we don't recommend it because the resale value on used vehicles is so high. So you're going to pay more for a used vehicle than you would a brand new one.
Okay. And the other question, who pays for the fit up of the vehicle? So how do we order a police vehicle out the gate without building into, what do they call the fit up?
Yeah, the upfit, yeah.
Upfit, yes.
So it can be managed a couple of different ways. Most of the time we can manage the upfit and you pay for the upfit separately, but we can cap it into the lease if we need to. But the thing about it is when you cap in upfit into a lease, you're upside down now because you're capping in so much money of upfit, meaning that vehicle is no longer worth what you paid for it. It's worth much less because you've got $10,000 capped into the cost of the vehicle.
So then the upfit cost is separate from the purchase cost.
It can be. I'm not sure how we did it in this model.
And
We did it in the model where it's separate.
so it's separate. So then would you manage that process or does the city manage that process?
The great thing is even though we don't cap it in, we can still manage the process so that when the vehicle is delivered, it's road ready.
Okay.
And that's what we would probably recommend doing because it takes additional resource. It takes time from the standpoint of staff, both in fleet maintenance and in police, to manage that process. If they can do that, it takes it allows them to kind of shift that workload over to enterprise.
So I'm assuming you already have a network of vendors who supply their service.
And we can still use the same vendors that we use. They have other vendors, so it will not force us to have to change anything we're currently doing. If we decide to change it to better, we can do that.
And our initial investment to get this program off the ground, did you say $2 million within the first year?
So currently we have about $2.3 million available. The total cost in the first year, and this is based on being able to get over 190 vehicles. So this is full cost. This is as high as the cost is going to be. Would be about a little over $2 million, $2,063,000.
And is that phased, or who needs the most vehicles when? And have you worked with the department heads to determine the flow of when you need it and what's available and how long it will take and all of that?
Based on my analysis, more than likely the department's going to need the most vehicles is going to be police.
Okay.
And we have money set aside for them that they can use for this. The general fund departments are also going to be the most needed. What's going to happen if council approves this, is that Enterprise Chrissy will meet with each department. They will first of all go back through, they have our master fleet list. So they will say, these are the vehicles that we recommend for replacement based on age, based on mileage, based on repair costs. They will make those recommendations. They will go to each department and say, this is what we need to do. They'll make recommendations with respect to what we should replace it with, and then we'll go from there. But our goal will be our goal is that we're looking obviously for approval on the 28th. Our goal would be to start delivery in about 90 to 120 days.
Okay, and so are you saying that we don't have to do any bids at all?
The way that this has been done, because we can piggyback, other cities have taken advantage of this in this calendar year, and our purchasing office has evaluated, we can piggyback off the fact that they use this master agreement. We can piggyback off what other cities have done and be able to do this without going through a bid process.
Okay. This is the first time I've ever heard that.
I understand.
I have never heard that. So I would love to say, is this going to be a trend that we don't have to worry about RFPs or dollar items? Is that what we're saying?
What I would say is that with some of the staff changes we've made, and also some reevaluation, that there is more opportunity for us to be able to have more flexibility with respect to procurement. I don't want to promise anything, but we do have the opportunity to. We're always going to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Because in every single conversation we've had at this council, we always hear bid, transparency, opportunity for everybody to participate.
Right.
And I'm fine with a different way of doing business. I just want to make sure that this is done across the board. This is a $2 million investment. That's what I want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
$2 million investment up front. Correct. We're talking about a replacement of more than 100 vehicles. Plus, we're redesigning our service infrastructure to handle this, and perhaps even our way of doing business.
Right.
So we're going down a different path than we've gone before.
Yes.
Okay. So what are the apples to the apples? Who are we checking with to make sure this fits? You said we check with our procurement department. Who else did we check with?
Legal office has reviewed the agreements, and,
Okay.
and Jeff has made has brought up no objection to anything. We've talked to other jurisdictions that have done this, and they have had the same experience.
Okay.
So we're talking about other jurisdictions in North Carolina.
Yeah. Because you're trying to compare apples to apples.
We're comparing apples to apples.
Right.
We do, one of the reasons why we have been very careful in the vetting of this is that we realized that she gave some examples of some jurisdictions that are similar to us in size, but obviously many of the jurisdictions that they work with are smaller. So that was the reason why we looked at Lee County, Florida, even though they have a different procurement policy, obviously in the state of Florida. In terms of the performance of the project, we could see how it actually worked and see if theirs is actually a larger operation than ours, so that's Fort Myers. We could deal with that. So we feel like we've dotted every I and crossed every T that we can with respect to this. And we'll continue to do so before the 28th to make sure that that nothing else comes up.
And is there any type of vehicle this does not? Can you buy fire trucks like this?
Fire trucks and ambulances, unfortunately.
Okay.
So what we would do is we would start with this purely for light duty vehicles, and that would basically be, on average, some of them are going to be more than this, but that would typically be anything under $50,000. So this would be pickup trucks. This would be crew cabs. On the high end, you're talking pickup trucks, half-ton, 1-tons, crew cabs. There might be the ability to use it with some utility bodies because now manufacturers are doing utility bodies in circumstances where we have to do cab chassis fits, like a garbage truck or dump trucks or stuff like that. This would not necessarily be an option at this point. So for those vehicles, we kind of still have to do things the way that we do them. And obviously for customs, like fire trucks and others, where we do a lot more speccing as part of that to make sure it's consistent with our existing operations, those would still be RFP. We would try to take advantage of piggybacks like we have in the past on those, but we would still have to treat them separately and treat them as a direct purchase.
So that was the conversation relative to the leasing program for the City of Rocky Mount's vehicles through Enterprise. And again, I shared this because the conversation came up yesterday about the city spending money in leasing vehicles and, to do it the old way. And so based on information that was submitted to City Council back in November of 2022, it projected over a 6-year period, nearly $4 million in savings. Say, caller, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Brunson.
Good morning.
I heard what they just said about leasing from Enterprise. But my question here again is, who's responsible for insurance? The individual, the city, or enterprise?
I thought about the same question, and it could have been in it when they kind of had conversation about it, but most likely, the city has some kind of level of insurance as well for its vehicles because they self-insure.
Okay, it would appear to me that if any type of accident should happen, enterprise should be responsible, being that you're leasing from them.
And they very well could be, but most of the time, it's a dual situation to protect the equity in the vehicle so that both individuals are protected. Because as they talked about, as they return these vehicles back, they're able to capture some of the equity in the vehicle. And so gain some of that money back that they spending. So while they may be spending $2 million on front, when they get ready to turn them back in 3 years, if the car is selling higher, then they're able to get some of that money back as a credit towards their new vehicle purchase.
So basically, they're talking about mileage, right?
Yeah, normally have mileage considerations are on those. And so basically, in a general lease, you are leasing the depreciated value of the vehicle. So the time of purchase and the time when you return that vehicle back. In a typical lease, now I don't know how this lease is set up, but in a typical lease, you're going to say, we'd expect the value this vehicle be worth this at the time of recapturing. And so you come out a whole lot cheaper that way. And again, I haven't seen this master agreement to figure out what the calculation cost point is, who's in part of insurance. The items here in the top line information they presented in the committee of whole meeting.
Okay, well, that's something we need to find out because that would be an additional expense. And my other
it would be the same expense that they already have anyway. So it wouldn't be additional because they're already insuring the vehicles regardless, right? And so whether the city's already paying for insurance or whether enterprise, if enterprise paying for it, it would be it would be a reduction in cost. But if they have to maintain insurance, what they already have, then it's the same cost.
Okay. Well, my other question is eminent domain.
Okay.
Now, they are taking some properties. Now, when they do eminent domain, do they go ahead and demolish those properties, or do they continue to sit in a disrepair condition? And if they continue to sit there, what's the purpose of eminent domain?
No, you would say, and the argument would be that if a city is executing eminent domain for particular said properties, that they are moving swiftly on whatever they're doing on that particular piece of property. So whatever it is, the intended use for that property, they're going right to work as quickly as governmental possible. So whatever that means, right? And so yes, they wouldn't continue to sit there. So if it's dilapidated homes, they was intended to fix up the home, then they're fixing it up. If it's dilapidated homes, they're planning on tearing it down to do something else, they're going to do that almost immediately.
So when do we find out when the eminent domain process is over?
I'm not sure the city will find out. Residents will find out when it's over. The individuals in which the things are taken from, they would know almost immediately. But I guess you would start seeing activity at those particular locations. So once you see people, like for instance, a store that's open on Atlantic Avenue, right? When you see a store closed down, then you know they ain't got it no more.
Well, that's true too. But my thought is, if they continue to let properties sit like they have this house over here on Discovery Street, what's the point?
Well, they can't do that with eminent domain.
I know, but my question is, they can't even demolish houses that's already on the book. How are you going to hop and have eminent domain and tear stuff down immediately? I don't get that. I don't.
So it is the thought process. They gonna do what they want to do.
Well, it needs to stop.
I'm just saying because you bring a very interesting point that hey, you got other stuff that they ain't got the money to do. But to your point, with this eminent domain situation, because they use that, they do have to work on it expeditiously, and so they're going to have to find the money and resources to do whatever they're doing to those said properties.
Okay, so was that already put in the budget for demolition with eminent domain?
Again, the past practice of this organization is they do stuff that's outside the budget and then gonna blame somebody else for why they overspent.
See, when you sit back and listen to things, you start wondering what in the heck is actually going on. And this is why I said earlier in my endorsement of you, you bring things to the topic. We'll ask the question and you research it, and we can, follow through with it. But and you don't hear any of the other candidates for the positions to do that. So I say to you this morning, continue doing what you're doing, because the people really needs to know exactly what is happening with the monies that's flowing through the city. And it appears to me that we need someone like Elon Musk to come down or go in to do some type of internal investigation, because what I'm hearing just don't sit pretty well with me. It really does not. And I'm just tired of it. I really am. Because seems like you said, they do what they want to do, and then they come back and piggyback on the citizens to get them back. It's just like the property over there across from Nash Tech. Why in the heck did you buy all that property and it's sitting over there with nothing going on but this?
Thank you. I don't know. You only can point out to one